Have you ever judged someone by their appearance, only to realize you completely misunderstood who they were? The early morning chill still clung to the private airfield outside Omaha, Nebraska, as Ethan Walker parked his pickup truck and stepped onto the gravel lot. Without wasting time admiring the sleek jets lined up like royalty, he adjusted his weathered baseball cap and headed straight toward the main hangar. His jeans were worn, his boots caked with dust, and his flannel shirt spoke more of long days in the field than corporate boardrooms. But Ethan wasn't here for show. He was here for a deal that could change everything. Inside, the polished floors reflected the golden rays filtering through the massive windows. A few sharply dressed salesmen clustered together, their expensive watches glinting as they laughed quietly among themselves. It took only seconds for them to notice Ethan. Whispers, sidelong glances, he had seen it all before. One man broke away from the group. Brandon Cooper, his nameplate gleaming on his tailored suit, approached Ethan with a rehearsed smile that barely concealed his skepticism. Ethan knew the look. He had grown up with it. People mistaking hard work for ignorance, grit for lack of ambition. Today, he didn't come to convince anyone. He came prepared, ready to shake the foundation of their assumptions. As Brandon hesitated, sizing him up, Ethan could already feel the tension brewing, like a storm forming on a distant horizon. Little did they know, this wasn't just a man hoping for a dream, it was a businessman with a plan. A history of resilience, and a future no one in that hangar could have predicted. And soon enough, they would all see it. Ethan hadn't always been the man walking into private airfields with million-dollar plans. His roots dug deep into the soil of a modest family farm in rural Nebraska, where every sunrise meant another battle against unpredictable seasons, thinning markets, and dwindling hope. Growing up, he watched his parents wrestle against debt and drought with nothing but calloused hands and relentless spirits. They had a saying, "The land owes you nothing, but it will repay what you earn." By the time Ethan was 22, the weight of the family farm had settled fully on his shoulders. Acres of corn and soybeans stretched to the horizon, but the profits barely stretched past the bills. Tradition kept neighbors anchored to outdated methods, but Ethan's mind was restless. He saw something few around him dared to imagine. A future where farmers didn't have to survive, they could thrive. When drought crippled the Midwest one brutal summer, forcing many nearby farms into foreclosure, Ethan made a decision that would change everything. Instead of selling to corporations as many had, he reinvested, small at first. He built high-tech greenhouses that could sustain crops year-round. He partnered directly with regional grocers, cutting out middlemen who swallowed profits whole. He risked everything, signing loans that left his nights sleepless and his days longer than ever. It wasn't immediate. There were seasons of failure, whispers of foolishness at the local diner, and moments when even Ethan questioned whether he was chasing a mirage. But he pushed forward, slowly, methodically. Walker Farms transformed from a struggling family operation into a growing agricultural enterprise. By his mid-40s, Ethan had diversified into organic produce, free-range meats, and farm-to-table delivery services across multiple states. Walker Farms became a name not just spoken at farmers' markets but featured in food magazines and restaurant supply chains. Still, Ethan never forgot what it felt like to be underestimated, to be seen only through the dust on his boots and the dirt under his nails. That memory, burned deep into him, fueled everything he did, and it was the very reason he now stood at the threshold of a new, audacious chapter: air transport. Because to Ethan, this wasn't just about scaling a business. It was about proving once again that dreams, no matter how humble their beginnings, could take flight, if only you had the courage to lift them off the ground. Ethan stood in the hangar that morning because he understood a truth many missed. The world wasn't waiting. It was moving faster, demanding quicker, fresher, better, and he intended to stay ahead of it. For months leading up to this day, Ethan had studied, calculated, and envisioned a new frontier for Walker Farms. Delivering his products by refrigerated trucks worked, up to a point. But traffic, distance, and unpredictable road conditions meant delays he couldn't afford anymore. Customers in cities like Denver, Minneapolis, and even as far as Atlanta were hungry for his goods. But freshness had a clock ticking over it, merciless and swift. When the idea first hit him, air transport, Ethan laughed at himself. A jet? It sounded ludicrous. Something reserved for CEOs of tech giants. Not farmers whose hands bore the story of every acre they had ever worked. Yet the more he researched, the clearer it became. If he could master the skies, he could leap over competitors stuck on the ground. Purchasing a private jet wasn't about vanity for Ethan. It was about vision. A jet meant same-day delivery, bypassing logistics companies and bottlenecks. It meant Walker Farms could offer farm-to-shelf freshness within hours, not days. It meant scaling his business to a level that even the boldest local farms couldn't match. But he knew what stepping into this world would cost, not just financially. There would be skepticism, dismissal, and laughter. The farming community whispered behind his back already, calling him a dreamer, saying he was throwing away good money on an impossible idea. And corporate types, like the ones bustling around this polished hangar, wouldn't even take him seriously. Yet standing there, feeling the low rumble of engines in the distance, Ethan felt none of that doubt. Only clarity. He had been underestimated before. He had been doubted his entire life. And every time, he had turned that doubt into fuel. As Brandon Cooper, with his perfect tie and guarded smile, approached to size him up, Ethan's jaw tightened slightly. He wasn't here to seek permission. He wasn't here for approval. He was here to do what he had always done. Take the unimaginable and turn it into undeniable success. And if they thought the farmer was just playing in fields they didn't understand, they were about to learn just how wrong they could be. Brandon Cooper's smile was thin as paper as he extended a hand toward Ethan. It was the kind of smile that said, "I'll entertain you, but only because I have to." "Good morning," Brandon said smoothly, eyes flickering down to Ethan's worn boots and back up with barely concealed skepticism. "How can I help you today?" Ethan returned the handshake firmly, his gaze steady, looking to purchase a jet. Something reliable, efficient, capable of carrying perishable goods across the country. The silence that followed was brief but telling. Brandon's eyebrows twitched upward, his well-practiced composure faltering for a heartbeat. He recovered quickly, but the damage was done. Ethan had seen it, the disbelief, the judgment. "Of course," Brandon said, voice tight with politeness, "though I should mention, our aircraft are typically designed for executive clientele." He let the words hang between them like a velvet noose. Ethan knew this dance. He had lived it 100 times over. In boardrooms, in city banks, even at local farm co-ops. It was always the same, the quick calculation. The unspoken assumption that dirt under your fingernails equaled ignorance. But Ethan had learned long ago that the best way to respond wasn't with anger. It was with results. Brandon led him toward a gleaming jet, its white surface catching the early light like a polished gem. "This here is the Falcon 400. He said, gesturing proudly. "Seats 8 comfortably. Top-of-the-line navigation. Luxury interiors." His voice trailed off slightly as he looked at Ethan's dusty jeans again. "Starting at 4.2 million. Ethan nodded, running a hand along the smooth metal. "Cargo specs?" he asked plainly. Brandon blinked, clearly thrown off by the directness of the question. "Well, it's primarily designed for passenger comfort. Not exactly meant for shipping produce," he said, the last words wrapped in an unmistakable layer of condescension. The air thickened between them. Ethan fought the instinct to clench his fists. Instead, he smiled, slow, deliberate. "I know what it's meant for," he said calmly. "I'm here to see what it can do." Brandon hesitated, struggling between sales instinct and personal bias. Ethan saw it all unfold in the subtle tightening of his jaw. The way his hands fussed with his cufflinks. The idea of a farmer owning a private jet clashed so hard against Brandon's worldview. It practically bent the air around them. And standing there, under the clinical lights of privilege, Ethan made a silent vow. He would not only prove them wrong, he would redefine what winning looked like. Ethan wasn't interested in small talk or being paraded past jets he had no intention of buying. He had come prepared, with numbers, projections, and a plan solid enough to silence any doubter, even one wrapped in a $1,000 suit. As Brandon stumbled through another half-hearted pitch, Ethan turned the conversation sharply. "Let's skip the window dressing," he said, his voice even but unyielding. "I'm running Walker Farms, one of the fastest-growing agricultural operations in the Midwest. Last year, we cleared $14 million in revenue. This year, We're projected to beat that by another 20%. I don't need champagne trays. I need cold storage options, weight distribution specs, and cargo adaptability. Can your Falcon 400 handle that? Or should I be looking elsewhere? The hangar seemed to still for a moment, as if the building itself needed a second to absorb the words. Brandon opened his mouth but said nothing. The easy smirk that had been playing at the corner of his lips earlier was gone now, replaced with something rawer, surprise, maybe even embarrassment. His mind was clearly scrambling, trying to reframe Ethan not as some dirt-streaked dreamer but as a legitimate client with serious buying power. Before Brandon could recover, another voice joined in, calm, professional. Sounds like you know exactly what you're looking for, said Alex Thompson, stepping forward, dressed similarly to Brandon but carrying himself with a different kind of energy. Alex extended a hand to Ethan with genuine respect. We can absolutely discuss customization options, Mr. Walker. Ethan shook his hand, appreciating the change in tone immediately. He turned back to Brandon, who now looked every bit the rookie caught under the harsh lights of reality. I'm not here to waste time, Ethan said quietly, but firmly enough that even the nearby assistants pretending not to eavesdrop could hear. I'm here to invest. If you're ready to have a real conversation, I am too. For the first time, Brandon lowered his eyes. The arrogant posture slipped. The salesman who had once dismissed Ethan based on dirt and denim now scrambled to meet him at eye level. In that moment, Ethan didn't just shift the conversation. He shifted the entire balance of power. Not with anger, not with shouting, but with undeniable truth, the kind that demanded respect whether someone wanted to give it or not. And in that hangar full of gleaming jets and quiet judgments, Ethan Walker began to redefine what real success looked like. As the final paperwork neared completion, Ethan's attention was caught by a quiet commotion near the reception desk. A young man in a Navy maintenance uniform, barely in his 20s, stood there, stiff and anxious, speaking to a middle-aged manager whose crossed arms and tight jaw told the story better than words. Something about the scene hit Ethan in the gut. Maybe it was the way the young man kept his voice respectful even as frustration crept into his face. Maybe it was how the manager's cold disinterest mirrored looks Ethan himself had faced a lifetime ago. He didn't hesitate. Give me a minute, Ethan said, handing the pen back to Alex with a nod. Crossing the polished floor, his boots loud in the sudden hush, Ethan approached the small group. The manager straightened instantly, masking his annoyance with a strained smile. Can I help you, sir? Ethan ignored him for the moment, fixing his steady gaze on the young man. What's your name? He asked. Marcus. Marcus Reed, the young man answered, his voice steady despite the tension. And what's going on here? Marcus? Marcus shifted awkwardly but spoke the truth. I applied for an apprenticeship in aviation maintenance. I meet the qualifications, but I guess I'm not what they were expecting. The words carried a heavy familiarity. Ethan felt them settle deep in his chest. Turning to the manager, he asked calmly but firmly, Is that true? The manager stammered, offering a vague explanation about high competition and more experienced candidates. Ethan wasn't buying it. He leaned in slightly, voice low but powerful. I'm about to trust this facility with a multi-million-dollar jet, and if you can't recognize potential standing right in front of you, maybe I need to reconsider who I'm doing business with. The color drained from the manager's face. Turning back to Marcus, Ethan smiled, the same small, knowing smile he had worn earlier with Brandon. You still want the apprenticeship? He asked. Marcus nodded, eyes wide, a mixture of disbelief and hope washing over him. Then consider yourself in, Ethan said, clapping him on the shoulder. The entire mood of the hangar shifted. People pretended to stay busy, but the message was clear. Ethan Walker wasn't just changing his business. He was changing the landscape for anyone who dared to dream bigger. Because true success wasn't just about how high you climbed, it was about how many others you lifted along the way. As Ethan stepped out into the crisp Nebraska morning, the weight of the day finally settled over him. The jet was his now, a gleaming tool ready to transform Walker Farms once again. But as he looked up at the wide-open sky stretching endlessly above him, he realized that today's real victory wasn't measured in contracts signed or dollars spent. It was in the flicker of hope he had seen ignite in Marcus Reed's eyes. Ethan thought back to his own journey, the endless fields, the sleepless nights, The countless doors slammed in his face. All the moments where someone could have offered a hand but didn't. He knew the power of a single opportunity given at the right time. It was more than a gesture, it was the difference between fading out and breaking through. Success, he realized, wasn't just about proving the doubters wrong. It was about making sure the next person wouldn't have to fight quite so hard just to be seen. Driving away from the hangar, Ethan didn't feel pride, he felt responsibility. Because when you rise, you don't just rise for yourself. You rise for everyone still climbing. In today's world, it's easy to judge by appearances, to assume, to overlook. But stories like Ethan Walker's remind us that resilience, vision, and heart don't wear fancy suits. They wear dust, sweat, and a quiet kind of strength that no amount of wealth can fake. And maybe, just maybe, if more people dared to believe in the unseen potential around them, the world could change one bold decision at a time. Just like Ethan did.